My daughter's fiance works in Wall Street, and his father works by the World Trade. So I did manage to find out that both of them got home safe, and my heart goes to those.
Hundreds of passengers are still on the premises, again, not knowing where to go tonight as the airlines work to find some place for them and some method of getting them out of here. Continental Airlines has opened up a corner of Lower Terminal C to hand out sandwiches and drinks to some of those stranded passengers, as is being done at the other terminals as well here at Newark Airport. Again, passengers having no idea when they can get out of here, as no planes will be leaving here until at least noon tomorrow. Reporting live from Newark Airport, Amy Nuzzo, CBS 2.
Thank you, Amy.
Right, we want to go now to Hazel Sanchez. As you look at videotape of what happened this morning, that is actually the second impact, plane hitting at about 9:02 to 9:04 this morning. Since that time, as you know, both towers have collapsed. They are gone. Hazel Sanchez is in the information center. She has some updates for us on the situation at area hospitals and, in fact, hospitals throughout New York State. Hazel?
And that's right, Todd. Hundreds and hundreds of people injured because of today's disaster. As I mentioned earlier, St. Vincent's Hospital asking for help, asking any doctors or nurses out there to give them a call if they can lend a helping hand. Also, because of the number of injuries today, Albany, Syracuse, and Westchester County hospitals have all been placed on alert. The Federal Emergency Management Agency sending 8 urban search rescue teams to New York City. That's about 72 people on each of those teams. And those rescue specialists have been trained to find victims in disastrous events like today. Also, the aircraft carriers on their way here to New York City. They're identified as the USS John F. Kennedy and also the USS George Washington as our guided missile cruisers. They're on their way to deal with any air or sea threats. And the New York City primary is, of course, scheduled today, postponed. No date has been rescheduled yet. Governor Pataki says he will reschedule it once we all get through this. The SEC will decide sometime tonight if the markets will open on Wednesday. And a travel note, the Lincoln and Holland tunnels are still closed. The GW upper level outbound is now open. The Staten Island bridges to New Jersey are open, but the crossings to New York are not open yet. And one minor event note, the Latin Grammys, they were scheduled to be tonight at Miami's American Airlines Arena. That event has been canceled, and that's the latest here from the information desk. So back to you.
Interesting note, Hazel, just to point out, we had reported much earlier today that Major League Baseball had canceled games today. It's the first time they have canceled games since the death of FDR.
That's been a long time.
The first time Major League Baseball is canceled, just to give you an idea of the impact on this country and what will go down in history as the worst attack ever.
Joining us on the set now is CBS2 reporter Amy Stone and CBS2 photographer Barry Weiss. They were actually sent out earlier today to cover a fashion show at Bryant Park and got diverted into all of this and almost lost their lives. First of all, we are so glad you are here. For a lot of reasons. Tell us your story. Tell us what happened. This is very overwhelming.
Well, usually, Barry, you're not used to sitting up here, but Barry is my main man behind the camera. He's the one that's shooting all the video, and he's a bit shaken up. But we went out, and right when we heard about the plane crash, we left Bryant Park, of course, and came down toward the World Trade Center, where we were shooting along the way, shooting video along the way, and then we came upon an engine, an actual engine of one of the planes which had hit a building, which we have video of. There's the engine, the FBI taking shots of the engine.
That was on Murray Street.
And then here it is, Barry. Talk about what you did.
Amy was standing next to me, took a shot of the tower. All of a sudden, Amy said, Barry, Barry. It came down. The police are screaming, move out of the way, move out of the way. I saw that. I took my camera, you'll see, I took it off the tripod and started running, and within seconds we were engulfed with black smoke.
That's coming at you very fast right behind you, correct?
It was amazing.
And at first you're just kind of standing there in shock, and you don't even think to run because you can't believe what you're seeing in front of you, and it seemed like it was far enough away that it wasn't going to come this way, and all of a sudden you just see this cloud of smoke. I kept thinking of the horror film The Blob coming at you and people running, screaming, and that's what it was, and you couldn't run fast enough because you were just over.
We got separated, and I was screaming for Amy, and then after a while you couldn't even speak because the smoke and debris was in your lungs and your mouth.
Were you blinded by the smoke and
You
debris?
couldn't see. I couldn't see my hand this far away from me.
We're all cleaned up.
Couldn't see. Yeah,
Relatively speaking, yeah.
I could not see my hand. A young man, God bless him, grabbed my arm, and because I was choking, he grabbed my arm. He said, "Come on this way." He grabbed a lady who was crying,
and
grabbed
he told
her,
you to breathe through your shirt.
and told me to pull my shirt over my mouth.
New Yorkers helping each other.
Helping each other, grabbed the both of us and took us to Beekman Street, where the dust had subsided.
Amy, what about you? You two were separated.
We got separated.
What happened?
And I actually, you can talk to people in the newsroom. I immediately got on my phone and just started screaming for Barry because, you know, this is my main man. And I looked behind me and saw this cloud, and the cloud had already captured Barry, and it was coming toward me, and I just thought he was gone. But you know, there were portable oxygen units all over the city, right in front of 100 Center Street, and they were there. Thank God for Barry. And we've been coughing, but you know, this is not. You know, we're doing great.
It is our job to cover the news. You almost lost your lives today, Barry. I know you're very choked up and overwhelmed now. Amy, I don't know how you're maintaining it, girl. I don't.
Well, you look around, and we're much better off than a lot of people. Sure. This is nothing. We're coughing a little bit, and Barry, his blood pressure is a little high right now. But you know what? When you look at the aftermath and what's to come, this is nothing. And I'm just, you know.
Thank God you're both here.
We walked along the streets. We saw baby carriages, shoes, briefcases, pocketbooks, clothing. People just dropped everything and ran.
Yeah, there's shoes. That's the one thing. There's shoes everywhere. There's like one shoe here and one shoe there, and papers, because we got right in there, and there was the ashes everywhere, and in the ashes you just saw papers and partially burnt papers, and you just wonder how it's ever going to be cleaned up.
You know, I tell people this. I've been to hell.
Yes,
this is hell.
Yes.
Never seen anything like this in all my years. Never, and never want to see it again.
Barry Weiss, Amy Stone, we're so glad you're here and you're safe, and thank you for doing your job so well.
We're just happy
helping
that
other people.
We, as everyone out there has lost people, Channel 2 has lost a couple of technicians at the World Trade Center, and we wish their families
God bless them.
God bless.
We're glad you two are so safe and able to come out here and talk to us. I know that your lives will be forever changed, as will a lot of people,
all of
but
ours.
the fact that you saw this and we're so close.
It's surreal. It really is. You look and you don't think you're so close, and you've just never seen anything like it. No one has.
Well, listen, thanks.
Okay.
Barry, I'm glad you're okay.
Thank you, yes.
Amy, I'm glad you're here.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
All right, we want to go now to Rose Wally, who's at Bellevue Hospital, with an update for us on the situation, the casualties, and the treatment going on there. Rose.
So far, they're telling us that there are about 400 plus patients at Beekman Hospital right now, hundreds more at St. Vincent's Hospital, about 150 at Bellevue, 2 DOA that we know of at that hospital, at Bellevue Hospital. The need for blood at Bellevue seems to be the most critical at this time. However, officials are telling us at this point that they have closed down the blood centers because of an overwhelming response of donors. They are, however, taking appointments from people who still do want to donate blood. Of course, that blood will be needed in the days to come. They're specifically looking for type O blood, the universal donor, and if you do have plans to donate in the next few days, make sure that you bring a blood donor card. Also, we can tell you here at NYU Medical Center, nurses, doctors, all the staff that they can possibly think of have been transported, shuttled over to the scene itself to try and treat the victims that are there that cannot be moved. Of course, thousands of people still stuck in rubble and the debris. Unknown at this time how many are actually there and how many casualties are going to come from all of this. We're live at NYU Medical Center. Rose Wally, CBS 2. Back to you.
Thank you, Rose, and hello again. Dana, Tyler, and Ernie Anastas continuing CBS 2's live coverage of the World Trade Center disaster today, this morning, until the afternoon.
7 hours, actually, since the attack on America. It all began at 9 o'clock this morning. A deadly terrorist attack on New York City and Washington, D.C. today. The targets, of course, you know, the World Trade Center right on your screen in New York City and the Pentagon in Washington. The World Trade Center in Lower Manhattan, as we know it, is no more. Both towers have been wiped out, leveled to the ground.
The drama started, as you said, just before 9. 2 airplanes, 2 separate jets, American Airlines planes on a suicide mission believed to be, crashed into the towers about 18 minutes apart. Then a short time later, each tower coming down separately. Massive damage, devastation. You can see all of the smoke there. You can hear the screaming people running for their lives from these office buildings. The most tragic loss today, and it's going to be a while till we know. As you see the tower coming down there, falling. Right.
That's an incredible sight.
It is an incredibly sad sight.
We were looking at it, in fact, Dana, we said it reminded us in some ways of what happened back in 1986 with the Challenger. It's that same eerie feeling you have no control over, and you can't imagine that this has happened.
You can't imagine. So many of us have been at the top, too, of, the observation deck. Tourists go. We're all tourists in our own town. I've been up there a million times to see this great city. The most tragic toll today, the death toll numbers, we don't have many numbers, and the mayor cautioning that it is going to be a while as we look for the survivors in this. They're still there right now as we speak, looking for survivors of this horrible accident. Although we have heard at least 5 people have died. The injured placed well over 1,000, 1,500. The mayor expecting that number to rise. One hospital alone that's gotten a lot of credit here, St. Vincent, which is a big trauma center, 600 people in all New York hospitals, 150 critical at this point.
We also have to tell you that a lot of people have been unaccounted for. Officials believe that probably about 10,000 people were inside that Twin Tower this morning at the time of the attack. You know it holds anywhere from 40 to 50,000, but we're told approximately 10,000 people were inside. And of course, there were hundreds of people on the ground, including police and firefighters. There's more to the story, of course. This has developed into Washington today.
And before we get to that, let's check with Cindy Hsu in the newsroom with some late information. Cindy.
Okay, Dana and Ernie, we are getting some incredible pictures in right now. Somebody was on the ground, just happened to be taking still shots of the first plane. That was the American Flight 11 that went into the first World Trade Center tower. There you see, it's just, over the Manhattan skyline, nothing happening. The second shot, it has already gone in. And this is American Flight 11 from Boston to LA. 92 people were aboard, 81 passengers, 9 flight attendants, and 2 pilots. And as you see there, they also caught the explosion. About an hour later at 10:05, that first tower did collapse. These are the first pictures we're getting in of the first plane, again, American Flight 11, that hit the World Trade Center Tower 1 shortly before 9 o'clock. Dana and Ernie?
Thank you very, very much. Let's continue. We were talking about Washington, too, because this tragedy has hit more than New York. In Washington this morning, while we were dealing with this on our TV screens, there was another attack, a plane, United Airlines jet striking the heart of a U.S. military complex. Also there, loss of life, no numbers exactly. Then a second plane that was either targeting the Pentagon or Camp David. Late word, it was targeting Camp David, presidential retreat in Maryland. That plane forced down by U.S. fighter planes.
And, of course, there was another plane that was said to be hijacked that crashed near the Pittsburgh area, and that happened at around 10 a.m. We're told that about 266 people possibly have been killed in those 4 separate airline crashes. That's 266 passengers and crew members aboard those 4 flights.
And there are pictures that we have, and we'll bring those to you as well in the area that's 80 miles away from Pittsburgh, Somerset County, Pennsylvania, and just blighted area now where you can see there's burned up. And these were all big planes, too, with a lot of fuel on board.
And you see the shot over and over again. Here in New York, there's a huge cloud of dust, some smoke that still blankets the lower Manhattan area. Airports are closed, top security is in effect at all bridges, tunnels, landmarks, and other locations. And also, 2 U.S. warships are heading into the New York Harbor for security. So we have police, fire, the National Guard, hospitals, all working feverishly to deal with the victims and the injured. Blood is needed. Doctors, nurses have all been called in, and all emergency services in New York are working to full capacity, stretched to the limits, to say the least.
Now, the President Bush, who was in Florida this morning when this happened, then moved to Louisiana, now has moved to a secure place out west, Strategic Air Command, under tight security. He quickly vowing to find those responsibles, he said, to hunt them down, and he he assures the American people that security measures were in place, are in place, and that it is our resolve in this country, as every leader, the president, the governor, and the mayor have said, we will pass this so-called test, and we will not be shaken. Yes, we will be saddened, deeply saddened by this, but America will stand tall through this.
And let's get right to what's going on right now at St. Vincent's Hospital. For example, Whitney Casey is standing by to tell us about the injured and the work that's being done there. Whitney.
Well, that's right. You heard Mayor Giuliani talk about the work that's been done here. He said when he flew down the street earlier this morning, he felt very comforted by the fact that there were EMS, emergency workers, and doctors, like you see behind me, waiting out in front. Now, it's been an ebb and flow here all day. Right now, it's a short respite, but in probably just about a half an hour, we'll see ambulance pulling up here and all of these surgeons and emergency workers attending to those people. Now, the number we have here right now is 267 that are here at St. Vincent, 30 in critical condition, 3 have now died, and they're telling us also that there are about 30 firefighters, police officers, and EMT workers that are being treated here right now. So those numbers again, 267, 3 dead. Reporting live from St. Vincent's, Whitney Casey, CBS 2.
Thank you, Whitney. What an effort underway in this city. And, of course, this will continue all afternoon, all evening. This work is far from over, and as the story develops, we certainly want to share whatever information we have with you.
There has been also, as you can imagine, an outpouring of spiritual support. Edward Cardinal Egan, the head of New York's Roman Catholics, spoke that we should all be prayerful. He was especially supportive in offering prayer for the doctors, nurses, police officers, firefighters, rescue workers who are working so hard on this day, and that those who pray should pray for them. In Washington, D.C., there was a mass today at the National Cathedral, 3,000 to 4,000 people there. And just checking around the suburbs, I know that churches are open this afternoon, and synagogues, places of worship, if that's something you want to do, that the doors of many places are open for you to offer your spiritual thoughts.
And those words, of course, echoed by President Bush earlier today when he asked everyone to pray for all of those people who are working so hard right now to help those who really need the help. Cindy Hsu is standing by right now with an update of information for us. Cindy, let's go to you in the newsroom.
Well, Ernie, within the hour, we heard from White House advisor Karen Hughes. She addressed the nation, and she said that the federal government is running as best it can under the circumstances. Here's more of what she said.
The federal government is acting to help local communities with search and rescue and emergency management operations, to take all appropriate precautions to protect our citizens, and to identify those responsible for these despicable attacks on the American people. While some federal buildings have been evacuated for security reasons and to protect our workers, your federal government continues to function effectively.
We were just listening to Karen Hughes. I just wanted to tell you a little bit more of what she said. She said that the terrorist attack has forced President Bush into hiding as a precaution since the White House was under threat of attack. That his whereabouts have been kept secret for much of the day, but now that he's reached the safety of the Strategic Air Command in Omaha, we can tell you that he flew aboard Air Force One, which is a virtual flying fortress. He is at a top security air base in Louisiana, and before heading to Offutt Air Force Base in Omaha, which is the home to the Strategic Air Command. Now, Mrs. Bush and a handful of aides were whisked away by motorcade straight to a safe and secret location away from the White House, and their 19-year-old twin daughters were also moved to secure secret locations. Barbara, as you know, attends Yale University. Jenna is at the University of Texas, and the only ones left in the White House are a skeleton team of advisors in the basement situation room. Dana, Ernie, back to you.
Cindy, thank you. This has changed everyone's lives in this country. All air traffic was quickly stopped. Planes leaving the United States airports, coming into the United States airports. Also, just entertainment-wise, Brett was here talking about National League Baseball calling off games, the Emmy Awards, Grammy Awards. Broadway shows are canceled in New York. Box offices closed indefinitely. Walt Disney World in Florida, Disneyland in California, Universal Studios in Southern California, all shut down. Major movie studios, the list is endless. Production on television shows talk shows, everything shut down. TFN, till further notice, again, as you watch the pictures that happened just after 9 this morning, as 2 aircraft crashed into each of the World Trade Center towers this morning.
As we watch, of course, Dana, everyone asks, what happened here? Who is responsible? To give you some of that information, so far the Islamic Jihad reportedly is saying that the attacks are related to the violence in the Mideast, keeping in mind the September 17th date is the anniversary of the signing of the Camp David Accord. That, of course, was some 23 years ago. Now, also today, reports that the Democratic Front for Liberation of Palestine and Osama bin Laden all set to be involved and reportedly a part of what happened here today. There had been warnings. There had been some reports issued some time ago, 3 weeks ago, from London. Osama bin Laden saying that something would be planned, some type of attack against the United States for its support of Israel. And we also heard earlier today PLO leader Yasser Arafat condemning the attacks today. We have some reaction right now. Jim Kallstrom is on tape right now. This was a statement that he made a little bit earlier. He is the former head of the FBI in New York City. Let's take a listen to see what Mr. Kallstrom has to say.
The notion that we can be absolutely certain, we can't be. So those of us in law enforcement over the years have dreaded but thought that this day might come. Not exactly what happened. Obviously, no one can imagine the immense tragedy that we're looking at. But the notion that some terrorist act like this would come, it was just a matter of when that would be.
That was Jim Kallstrom. Again, you're looking at pictures from this morning of the thousands and thousands of people who had gone for a normal Tuesday day of work, and then were told to head north, leave, get out of Lower Manhattan. Marcia Kramer and Lou Young have been following with the governor and the mayor. They had a news conference in the past hour and a half at an undisclosed location. The mayor, the governor, and Mr. Carrick, Bernard Carrick, the police commissioner, just talking about how the city will continue throughout this horrible day into the evening. Marcia, can you give us an update?
Well, first of all, what you need to know is that because of all of Lower Manhattan is having a problem, what they've done is that they've actually moved the command center from Lower Manhattan to an undisclosed location in Manhattan. All of the agencies that would normally be responding to an emergency have been moved out of Lower Manhattan, and they're in an undisclosed location with the mayor. The mayor has gathered with him all of his major cabinet members. The head of the Emergency Management Task Force is with him. His deputy mayors are with him, and all others, including the health commissioner, are with him, trying to formulate a policy to try to get through this crisis. The governor is also with him, and what you need to know here is that they are trying to have a concerted effort, a concerted response where the state tries to help New York City get through this crisis. The most immediate thing for New York City right now is to replace the number of fire and policemen who were rushed to the scene. They've been working there since 9 o'clock this morning, some of whom have unfortunately passed away because they were on the scene when the building collapsed. And so right now they're bringing in reinforcements from the state. Governor Pataki is bringing in over about 2,000 people from the National Guard and the state police, and they are going to spell the New York City emergency workers in trying to find, getting people out of the buildings, trying to find if there are people that are still alive, and trying to find out if there are also any dead bodies. Still, there is no count as to how many people have been injured, but when Mayor Giuliani was asked about this, he said, the number is more than any of you, any of us can bear. It was a very grim mayor, a very grim governor, and very grim members of the mayor's inner circle who surrounded the mayor as he was trying to talk about dealing with this crisis. We should also know, though, that the mayor himself was actually caught in the building collapse. After the first plane hit World Trade Center 1, Mayor Giuliani's first instinct was to rush to the scene. He rushed to Park and Church Street. Then another plane hit, and then after that, the building collapsed in and of itself. Giuliani at that point was near Barclay Street, 75 Barclay Street, and the mayor had to find an emergency route out. In fact, it took the mayor about 10 minutes to find a way safely out of the building. One of the things that's going on now is the question about how New York City and also federal law enforcement authorities are going to be able to respond to this, because in the same building with the city's emergency preparedness office in World Trade Center number 7 was the Secret Service office. We don't know at this point how many Secret Service officers and emergency personnel were in that building. What we do know that the building caught fire. It's in danger of collapse. It may already have collapsed by the time we're talking about it. That is a concern. Also, the mayor is calling on New Yorkers to pray for people, and also he and Governor Pataki both want to send a message to the people who did this. They call them barbaric terrorists. They want to send a message that New Yorkers are strong, New Yorkers will get through this, and most importantly, the United States, with the governor behind it, with the mayor behind it, are going to seek retribution. They're not saying when, they're not saying how, but they say that there will be vengeance, and the people responsible will be forced to pay. Reporting live someplace in Manhattan, I'm Marcia Kramer.
Marcia, we wanted to know, have the mayor or the governor announced when we'll be hearing from them again?
We expect another press conference sometime within the next hour. Obviously, both Liu Young and myself will be there, and we'll come out and report to you just as soon as possible. But right now, I think that the important message that Mayor Julie wants people to do is to keep calm. They've told me repeatedly they don't think that there are going to be any more terrorist attacks here, but of course you never know. And they want people to stay calm, be calm, pray for the people who may have lost their lives, pray for the injured, and if they can, to donate blood to help out the cause.
Marcia, of course, we know that all of this boils down to information, getting information out to what's going on right now and what may happen. Have you been given any type of a schedule as far as the rest of the evening and even into tomorrow as to what we can expect? I know you talked about a possible news conference. Is there anything else that's pending?
Well, what they're trying to do now is to develop a way. First of all, they want to develop a list of names, the people who might have been in the World Trade Center, the people who might have been on those planes, and people who might have been in surrounding buildings that were affected when the World Trade Centers collapsed on each other. And so what they're going to do, they're calling on businesses and corporations to help develop a phone link system so that people who are worried that their loved ones may possibly have been injured or hurt can call a hotline to get some information. You know, to get names of people who may have been taken to hospitals, the walking wounded, people who may have been injured. But right now, that's their task, setting up some kind of a phone link system that will take care of the thousands, maybe tens of thousands of calls that they're going to be getting. So it's going to take some time, and that's why they haven't announced it yet, because they expect such a volume of people who are looking for police officers and firemen who responded to the crisis, to people who worked in the World Trade Center area, to people who might have just by happenstance been traveling there either as tourists or whatever. So they're trying to set up some mechanism so that the loved ones can call in and find out if their loved ones are okay, are in a hospital, which hospital, and how to contact them.
Because there are so many.
We expect that at the next press availability, the city will be making those lines available, and I can assure you we'll bring you those numbers just as soon as we get them.
Very good. So many people involved here. Marcia, you're on standby. We'll come back to you in a while.
We had spoken earlier about the President Bush, who has been all over the country today, Florida, Louisiana, the Strategic Air Command headquarters in Nebraska for a National Security Council meeting teleconference. The Associated Press, we just got word, is also now saying, though, that President Bush is returning to the White House. We'll keep you posted on the president's whereabouts on this critical day.
And, of course, earlier the president did talk about prayer and thinking about the people who are trying to help others right now. We have had numerous reports of leaders calling for us to stop, think for a moment, and to pray. No better place than St. Patrick's Cathedral. Pablo Guzman is standing by live right there. Pablo, why don't you tell us what's going on at that point?
There are people here who are preparing for a 5:30 service, we're told, that will be presided over by Cardinal Egan himself here at St. Patrick's. There is extra police presence, as you can see. There is always some kind of police presence at St. Patrick's because of the kind of days that we live through, and you know about some of the irrational attacks that have taken place here in the past. This is obviously quite different, and for those people who don't know quite what this is all about, Charlie, step out with me. We're at 5th Avenue and 51st Street. All you got to do is look down 5th Avenue and see a sight that you normally do not see. Those billowing clouds of smoke from lower Manhattan really tell the story far more than I ever could. We were at the New York Blood Center just before we came here. We'll have some pictures and sound to share with you. They were overwhelmed. Now, you know, these are folks that normally say, say, hey, we need blood, we always have a blood shortage. That did not happen today. As soon as New Yorkers heard about what happened, they came out in the hundreds. They actually had to tell people to take tickets and come back tomorrow unless you're type O, that they do need. We'll have pictures and sound from that for you a bit later on. Back to you.
Great turnout. Thank you, Pablo.
All right, the timetable, if you're just getting home, 4:38 this afternoon, and some people who may have started early to get out of town, it has been a long trek out of town, and here is how this day started here, the attack on America. Sometime just before 9 a.m., the South Tower hit by an American Airlines jet. 18 minutes later, the North Tower hit by an American Airlines jet. Air traffic in the entire country closed, shut down. First time in history the FAA has made that decision. We heard from President Bush, who said, we'll hunt down who's ever responsible for this. Then again, 10 o'clock, and these are happening very quickly, these events, another plane, United Airlines jet, crashes near the Pentagon. Again, people injured, people evacuated. Back here in New York at the same time, the South Tower of the World Trade Center crumbling to the ground. People are running uptown, running for their lives, debris flying all over the place. You can't see. People so frightened. The North Tower collapsing moments after that, and then another plane crash, a United Airlines jet, Somerset County, Pennsylvania, near Pittsburgh, and it's believed that one, is that the one, Ernie, that might have been intended to have gone to Camp David?
Yes, that's a possibility. We don't really
confirm
know that right now, but that's a possibility.
All hijacked.
Yes. There were so many people, of course, involved in this today, people who were just, quietly, innocently going to work, going about their business, and we've had a number of accounts on the air from those who have come into the studio or on the telephone. Larry Kofsky, sort of one of our own, if you will, CBSMarketWatch.com, was down on Wall Street in that area doing his job. Larry, you're joining us on the air right now, and you have an own personal story to tell us about where you were and what you saw.
Well, Ernie, I was at the New York Stock Exchange where I normally spend my time covering Wall Street, and we heard the initial reports that there was something going on at the World Trade Center, and I was asked to go down and take a look and see what I could see. And I was standing at Broadway and Liberty Street and looking up with a number of basically other curiosity seekers when the second plane hit, which we actually didn't see. It hit from behind, from where we were standing. But there was just an eruption of debris and smoke and fire from the building, and people turned tail and were running as fast as they could. I got knocked down a couple times.
Were you covered by?
Well, the back of my shirt got hit pretty good. I was knocked down twice and made my way around to Park Row right by City Hall, where I was watching and talking to some other people. And as we were talking, we saw number 2 World Trade. I guess it was the first one that came down, and it just imploded and fell down. And at that point, the smoke and the debris was just it was almost a scene from a movie.
Yes,
and people,
it's been described like that almost all day.
And people were, as you just said, running for their lives. And at that point, we made our way uptown, and here we are.
How did you make your way uptown?
On foot, all the way.
All the way.
Can you talk about we've heard about the dust and we've heard about the rubble. Tell me about what the ground felt like. Did you think it just, was it the huge vibration with that explosion? Was it loud also? What was the sound?
It was loud, but that second plane, it didn't shake the ground as you would think an airliner hitting an office building like this would have done. It was, the ground didn't shake. In fact, my first reaction was that it must have been a gas explosion in the building that was already burning, because I could not have conceived that an airplane...
This is what you saw, Larry?
That's
you were there, you saw that.
I was down there.
You'll never forget this.
I will never forget it. It's still in my hair.
It was hard to breathe too, right? Or
well, I managed to stay away from the wave of smoke, so from that perspective, I guess I did fairly well. But there were a lot of people running, and it seemed as I walked uptown, the further uptown I got, the less chaotic the situation was.
Were you able to talk to some of those people there that were running? Did you stop it? Were you able to stop it?
I did. In fact, I spoke to one gentleman who was on a ferry coming down the Hudson as number 1 was hit. And
what did he say?
Well, he was actually reading his paper and heard it and looked up and said that at that point the ferry, which was supposed to stop at the World Financial Center, just kept right on going and stopped elsewhere downtown. But there was a lot of chaos and concern aboard the boat because people didn't know at that point what was going on.
Now, on another note, trading, as you know, has halted on Wall Street. And there are a number of investment companies that are located right down in that area, of course. What is the status now as far as tomorrow? Do you have any information, since that is your line of work?
I've heard nothing specifically other than the fact that the New York Stock Exchange is holding a conference call later on this afternoon. Pure speculation on my part, cannot imagine, just in terms of the logistics of getting people in and out of downtown Manhattan, that they can open up, certainly not tomorrow.
They've talked about how other buildings, I mean, the mayor was saying it's still unclear what other nearby buildings, business offices, investment firms were racked by this.
And there were plenty of investment firms in the Trade Center itself that had offices that were clearly destroyed today. It's surreal. You look at the pictures and you
can't believe it.
I was in the building at 8:35 getting off the train, walking through, and
incredible. Fortunately, you are here to talk to us today. I'm sure you managed to get to a telephone to call somebody at home, let people know you were okay.
My wife was quite upset. She would rather that I be there than here, but
we appreciate
there's no moving out of New York at this point.
Okay, Larry Kofsky, CBSMarketWatch.com, eyewitness, and you lived it, and you're here to talk about it. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Numbers of injuries and deaths are still being counted. It will be some time before we know the full impact of this, although the mayor saying at least 2,100 wounded, 600 sent to area hospitals as they continue to work. You know, these pictures we're showing you now are from this morning, at least these right here, but the work continues ferociously downtown as the smoke, as you're seeing a live picture of what is left of the World Trade Center. We will all have to change our view as we look at the southern tip of Manhattan. We see Lady Liberty off there, a tiny little island there on the right as she stands there in her harbor that has been so very hurt today on this tragic day in American history, and no Twin Towers there to see anymore. But the smoke continues.
And we had mentioned earlier, Dana, of course, that a lot of people are still unaccounted for. That is the job underhand right now. Officials believe that about 10,000 people were inside the Twin Towers this morning at the time of the attack. Of course, there were numerous people on the ground, hundreds of people, including police and firefighters. We have just gotten word, we were talking to Larry Kofsky, Wall Street will be closed tomorrow. The NASDAQ, the American Stock Exchange, and the New York Stock Exchange. That's the latest we have on Wall Street.
Let's check with Todd McDermott. He's in our information center with some late information. Todd.
Dana, Ernie, I was struck by a phone call I got from my own mother, thinking that she didn't know whether I was okay, whether the family was okay. It's important tonight that you get a hold of your family, and obviously you get home to your family. We have some information from here in the Information Center on how to get home tonight. I know you're going to want to hug your kids and your spouse as well. First of all, 7 subway service, the number 7 line, that line has resumed service, as have all other lettered subway lines. Again, all lettered service has been restored if you need to get home tonight. And again, this is about the time many people will be heading home. That was restored earlier today. Now, only emergency vehicles are being allowed into Manhattan at this time. It's important to note, if you're trying to get into Manhattan to see a loved one, to get home, you won't be able to. Only emergency vehicles are allowed in. Penn Station closed until further notice. Again, the Penn Station's been closed most of the day now and will not reopen anytime in the foreseeable future. Of course, we'll keep you updated on that. Also, New York City buses are operating. If you get out on the street, you will see the buses in service. No fares are being collected. It's a good way to get home as well. Grand Central Station is open, offering just, though, limited service. Again, limited outbound Metro North service. Again, no fares being collected. Now, this is from metrocommute.com. The New Jersey commute, complicated today, obviously, for quite a while. The tunnels, bridges closed. Now, New Jersey roadways affected by security measures. I-80 eastbound, I-95 northbound, that traffic being diverted in Bergen County from the George Washington Bridge area. I-80 is closed eastbound from Saddlebrook Road. You can expect delays in downtown Newark as well. I also want to give you a look now, as we again look at the devastation, at some of the other things happening around the country. Primarily, I want to take you to Florida. This is a scene you may not have seen earlier, but we did talk about it earlier today. Among the places evacuated, Walt Disney World in Florida. If we could take you there to that in just a moment, you will see that is one of the many places that was evacuated. Not only the Sears Tower in Chicago, Los Angeles on full alert, many other the areas in Seattle, anywhere there was a large building, there was a shutdown and evacuation. I want to show you now, if I can, though, what Walt Disney World in Florida looked like at the moment they began to evacuate people from there. There it is, buses coming out. If you've ever been there, you know, Walt Disney World is basically a compound set off by highways, and there are several roads in, several roads out, can be controlled. People walking out, taking trams out, taking buses out. One of the many areas evacuated, as well as obviously all the major government buildings in Washington. Some of those evacuated before the Pentagon was struck today, others afterwards. Again, that is what you're seeing, though, in Florida. Walt Disney World among the places evacuated today in anticipation of further terrorist attacks. Also, I'm told that just a short time ago we saw a police escort here in Manhattan for trucks transporting blood to area hospitals. Again, St. Vincent's has become ground zero, but many of the hospitals, Bellevue also, and many other hospitals treating the wounded, the injured, the critically injured. Surgery, a requirement as well for many of the people. We don't have a count on how many have been injured, how many will require treatment. Mayor Giuliani says it may be days before we have an exact count on those dead and those injured in this tragedy here in New York alone, let alone at the Pentagon in Washington. But we did see that trucks transporting blood to local hospitals. Also, as Ernie mentioned, the stock market, Wall Street closed today. Many other closings obviously to follow as the mayor assures New Yorkers, don't be frightened, continue to cooperate, but there is a long haul here to get back to normal from where we started today at about 8:48. Ernie, Dana, back to you.
Todd, thank you so much. Along with those hospitals who are actually at one point also put out the call for doctors and nurses who might be able to help. The blood center locations, 310 East 67th Street, 153 East 53rd Street, the Citicorp Center there, and not too far from us, 150 Amsterdam Avenue. And as our reporters have said, the turnout has been incredible because that's what we do here in New York. So be patient. You might even be given a card, a number, time to come back and give blood at a later date.
Okay, Dana, we have a guest in the studio. His name is Micha Halpern. He happens to be a political commentator from Jerusalem who just happened to be in New York when this all happened. Of course, this is an amazing story. You have so much insight here. What do you think happened here?
Well, I can't say who did it, and I don't think anyone at this stage can say. We can have guesses as to who perpetrated this dastardly deed. What I can say is, from the point of view of the terrorist, it was a tremendous success. The terrorists...
How do they pull something like that off? You were talking earlier about how it takes so much coordination, so many different pieces to make something like this happen. Can you describe the mindset and how that organization works?
Exactly. In order for one act like this to happen, tens of people have to be involved in order to coordinate places, positions, activities, explosives, weapons, everything else. In order to get simultaneous deeds like this to happen, many, many more people had to be in the works. And as a result, you have them also not just coming in New York, you've got it elsewhere. So you've got terrorists, a huge terrorist unit working. So
you have a very diverse group of people involved?
Right, not just in terms of intelligence, but also in terms of operations, in terms of gathering information, as well as in terms of bringing stuff. If one link would have fallen, the entire act might not have succeeded.
Which, from their eyes, the person who was at the controls, because many of the stories I've read have said the pilots were not the American Airlines pilots at the plane, at the controls there. Most likely it was a very skilled hijacker or someone who got their way to the cockpit chair.
If indeed that happened, yes.
We don't know that for sure.
We have no idea. But what I can say, from the point of view of the terrorist, their objective is to frighten all of us, to make us afraid. But the reality is we can't be afraid. The reality is that from their point of view, they're martyrs. From our point of view, they're suicide terrorists. A martyr theologically is a positive thing. A warrior for a cause, a suicide person should be shunned. And indeed, they are suicide terrorists and not martyrs. In their perspective, and from the perspective of politically as well as theologically from their perspective, they're respected by their families. They're embraced by their environs. Their leaders even support them, if not passively, then actively. And now we have to look at the opposite. We have to see it for what it is. The destruction of innocent human life.
I would be interested in your take, Mr. Halpern. We heard Yasser Arafat today condemn what happened here in New York. At the same time, we've also seen celebrations in Palestine. Give us your view as how that works.
Well, I think there are several things important to recognize here. First, everyone who claims responsibility might not be responsible, and everyone who denies responsibility might not be irresponsible. That being said, I think it's very important to recognize that there is a tremendous amount of antagonism towards the United States. Israel and the United States are linked in many ways. The United States is the arch demon for fundamentalist Islam. There's no question about it. Anyone connected to that, anyone connected to the United States, also becomes a part of that demonization. Yeah. Israel is a part of that. The Jewish people are a part of that also. Unfortunately, though, it's very interesting that over the last few weeks we've seen that the United States has recognized that they were potential targets in foreign countries, and have even scaled down their responsibilities in various places.
We had reported, about the report out of London some 3 weeks ago where Osama bin Laden had threatened that there would be some type of action taken against the U.S. because of its support of Israel.
No, absolutely. There's a tremendous amount of links back and forth. It's not just because of support of Israel, it's also what the United States represents.
Okay, so what does this all do now?
Right. What happens ultimately is the United States believes fundamentally in freedom. It believes in the objectives of democracy. Israel is connected to that bond, both historically as well as politically today. The street runs both ways, and as a result, the United States is a potential target, not because of its relationship with Israel, but because of what the United States represents, and that's very important. Israel also represents those issues. Hence, we have the celebration throughout certain places of the Middle East.
How is this all going to be handled when you go back home, when you go to Israel, in the press, by the people?
Well, it's very interesting, actually. There are a lot of strange worries that my family has when I live in Jerusalem, the fact that I live in Jerusalem. Now it's very interesting. My Jerusalem counterparts are actually calling here to worrying about how we are in confronting terror, the likes of which we haven't seen almost ever.
We want to thank you very much for joining us today. Micha Halpern, a political commentator from Jerusalem who just happened to be here in New York. Your observations on what you have experienced here today and perhaps what will happen next.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Safe journey home.
Yes.
4 planes crashed today, 266 people on board, passengers, flight attendants, and pilots. Those numbers we are hearing, we do believe those will be all confirmed as fatalities. Traffic has been a harried situation, to say the least, from early this morning. We have with us in the traffic center Rachel Letzker sitting in, and she can give us a feel. We know Penn Station, Grand Central Terminal, they have had closures. Can you help us out, Rachel, and let us know what's going on?
Well, we are starting to see some sporadic travel right now on the trains, the A, B, D, E, F, G, L, N, Q, R, and W are seeing sporadic service at this point, along with the 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So we are starting to see some service resume, but again, it's quite sporadic at this point. Q Express is not running, so you can keep that in mind. Also, Amtrak has resumed running on the Northeast Corridor between D.C. and New York at this point. We do have lots of closures on the roadways as well. FDR is closed from Battery Park Underpass out to the UN. Also looking at closures southbound on the Deegan at 230th Street. Now, the northbound side is open at this point. Virtually, we have no travel moving into Manhattan. We are looking at some travel heading out at this point. I'm going to show you a couple of perspectives that we have right now as we head and take a look at the 59th Street Bridge at this point. You can see the skyline at this area still heading over right now and showing you the George Washington Bridge. Now, the upper level outbound, that has been reopened at this point, still closed on the lower level and the inbound side of the upper level, along with the Holland Tunnel and the Lincoln Tunnel as well. Those do remain shut down at this point. We'll take take a look looking from the Empire State Building as we head out to another view of the area at this point. Also taking a look from Staten Island, another perspective of the skyline. Certainly not going to look the same from this point on. And as we take a look right now, showing you things as we move out along the Belt Parkway to JFK. You're looking at traffic heading towards the Van Wyck Expressway there. Very slow at this point as folks tried to head to their destinations at this point. Also along the New Jersey Turnpike out by Newark Airport. Again, you'll notice no airplanes on the runway through this area, along with all the other airports throughout the area. Service there not resumed until at least 12 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. And as we also show you things moving along the Grand Central Parkway out by LaGuardia, same deal here. Again, no air travel throughout the country at this point. Also looking at a perspective heading in from Giant Stadium at this point, taking a look into Manhattan at this point. We'll also show you things moving along the Grand Central Parkway, a very heavy ride as folks are heading to Queens on the Grand Central Parkway here. Also continuing to deal with some closures. We do have some service that is working right now. The ferries in the New York Waterway, we are starting to see some service heading New Jersey bound if you are heading that way. Again, southbound on the Henry Hudson closed by the Henry Hudson Bridge at this point. Northbound is open to the George Washington Bridge to head outbound into New Jersey at this point. Both sides of the Cross Bronx Expressway are open, but again, very heavy traffic as folks do head to and from their destinations at this point. Throgs Neck and Whitestone, open both ways at this point. Triborough, Bronx, and Queens bound only. That's where we're seeing service. No inbound service there. Again, the George Washington Bridge upper level open. Outbound, again, Lincoln and Holland, that does remain shut down. Brooklyn Battery Tunnel and the Brooklyn Bridge both closed at this point. Also, Brooklyn Bound, Williamsburg Bridge, and Manhattan Bridge, that is open to pedestrian traffic only. We're seeing no vehicles crossing through these areas. Staten Island bound, Verrazano Bridge, that is open. Brooklyn bound, though, that does remain shut down. Again, New Jersey bound, Bayonne and Goethals, along with the Outer Bridge crossing, that is open. The Staten Island bound sides of these three bridges, though, that does remain closed at this point. And on the LIRR, we are seeing limited service eastbound heading out of Penn Station, just very limited service at this point. Also westbound on the LIE shut down heading into Queens, westbound Northern Boulevard. Also closures through this area from Glen Clove Road out to Lakeville Road. This is due to emergency vehicles trying to gain access to the hospitals out in Long Island. So certainly trying to get folks some help through these areas as well. Northern State Parkway shut down at the Queens line along the Southern State Parkway at Meadowbrook. So certainly try to avoid these areas at all costs at this point. Eastbound 80 express lanes closed at exit 62. The local lanes shut down at 95. Westbound sides closed at exit 4 at this point. Northbound on the New Jersey Turnpike is open now north of interchange 11. Now the east and western spurs also have been reopened, but northbound 95 and eastbound on the Newark Bay extension, that does remain closed at this point. Southbound on the Palisades Parkway closed at exit 2. Also eastbound Route 4 at Jones Road shut down. Eastbound Route 46 at 5th Street, and along with eastbound Route 3 at the New Jersey Turnpike as well. Northbound Routes 1 and 9 closed at the Pulaski Skyway, along with Route 7. That is also shut down at the Whit Penn Bridge. We do have numerous closures. Again, service just beginning to resume on the trains and lots of service heading out of Manhattan, but again, still no service moving into Manhattan at this point. Back to you.
Thank you, Rachel. It is 5 o'clock on this Tuesday, September 11th, 2001, a day we'll never forget in New York's history, in this nation's history.
So much going on, of course. We have our reporters out on the field. Vince Dementri is joining us right now. He is live in Lower Manhattan with an update as to what's happening there at the moment. Vince?
I can tell you I've just been a place that I have been to that, frankly, no firefighters want to go to. Behind me, you see burning 7 World Trade Center. I didn't know it at the beginning, at the tape you're about to see. I didn't know it was a 7 World Trade Center, but I know it now coming back. A 4-block radius has been cordoned off because fire officials expect that building to collapse. I've been within 10 feet of that building within the last 15 minutes. I've been as close to where no one wants to be. Take a look. control. When you first saw it and walked up to it, you heard it as you were racing to it, but to see it's another thing. What's the first thing that went through your head just after initially seeing it?
I just wanted to cry, to be honest with you. It's terrible.
We are in an abandoned skyscraper, and quite frankly, I don't even know where I'm at. I see a sign outside that just gives me a reference of Barclay Street. As you can see all around here, the windows have been blown completely out. And as we take a walk towards the front of the building here, you want to take a look outside. If you have never been to war, like I have never been to war, then this is what it looks like. We don't know what that building is. We don't know where this building is, but they're obviously on fire. Maybe there's a chance that they could collapse. I've been on this earth for 37 years. I've never been to a war, but I can only imagine that this is as close as I've ever come.
It's an unbelievable sight. I've never seen something like this, and I'm 20 years on this job. This is the worst I've ever seen it before. It's unbelievable, the devastation. We got burnt cars. We have the top of the World Trade Center toppled onto the street. We have we don't know how many people are missing right now. We don't have that number yet, but I'm sure that there is.
I've heard reports that there are just bodies littering the street.
Well, there's reports of people trapped inside the building, but we haven't gone. We can't go in yet until the fire's under control.
More debris falling from a nearby building, the World Trade Center. We're at West Broadway in Barclay. Very difficult to breathe here, but look around. This must have been ground zero where this thing blew up. Car after car after car, buses, completely obliterated and burned straight down to the steel. Behind me, that gaping hole, that's where one of the two towers stood. It's not there. And as you can see above me, the fire in this adjacent building just continues to rage. It's a surreal environment. It's almost impossible to describe. Again, except to make a war correlation. Whoever said somebody declared war on us, it certainly looks like it, doesn't it?
Vince, can you hear us now?
The firefighter that you heard in that piece, his name is Lieutenant John Ginta. He talked about wanting to cry at the sight of what he saw. I can now identify with what he's talking about. He talked about bodies in the street. I didn't see any. He talked about people being trapped in that rubble. But as many of you well know, and frankly, I'm not sure who's on the anchor desk, but I have many friends in the law enforcement community. And I've talked to friends of theirs today. And I found out that many of my friends are in that building, 1 and 2 that have collapsed. And you try to distance yourself from this stuff, but when it hits home, it's a far different story. So my prayers right now go out to their families and the families of everyone who's been affected by this. I'll throw it back to you in the studio.
It's, we join you in what you have just expressed, and we're also very sorry about the personal involvement that you have in that story. Can you stay with us for a moment, Vince?
Sure. Is this Ernie?
Yes, Ernie and Dana. You described what is very much the warlike atmosphere there, and seeing you with your mask on and walking through was just incredible, and that's compelling television, if you will, not to mention the magnitude of the loss here and the depth of the story. How did you get in there?
Well, we just, you know, again, you hate to make these war correlations, but my photographer and I, Terrence, you know, we just went from street to street, building to building, alley to alley, and we just weaved our way in. You know, when we got as far as we thought we could go, we talked it to each other, and of course safety was amongst our concern. And we just said, let's just keep going. Let's see how far we can get to this without endangering our own safety. And when you saw how close we got to what I now realize behind me, 7 World Trade on fire and expected to collapse, you know, what was really frightening is that when we were looking around, there was nobody there. It was us, and that was it. And I think at that point the realization was that we were really in a place where we really just needed to get as much video as we possibly could to show everybody just that just the total devastation and the destruction, and then just get out.
Well, it was dramatic to watch, and we also have some video right now that we're looking at. You interviewed one of the firefighters there. You were talking about the number of people that are missing. He said that they don't know. There are many trapped inside, but they can't go in, I heard him say, until that fire is under control. Do you have anything more on that as to when they might be able to get in there?
Ernie, all I can tell you is that everyone that is talking to me right now, fire officials, police officials, emergency officials, are telling me they'd love to go in there and do whatever they can to try to rescue anybody that might still be alive. But they can't. There are too many things on fire. There are too many buildings that they are concerned with collateral damage that could collapse at any minute. And imagine the catastrophe that would then take place, that if you sent in hundreds, maybe thousands of rescuers to be in that situation, to have 50, 60, 70 tall skyscrapers around them collapse on them. It's wrenching their hearts. This is what they get paid to do. But right now, nobody can go in. Right. You just can't.
Vince, I know it wrenches your heart too. You and I have worked together for several years here, and as I look at you standing out there, I think of you at TWA Flight 800 out in that boat in the water in that dark night after that plane crashed. And I know how moved you were by that and how moved you are by this. And we're not talking about comparing tragedies here, but we're talking about what we do for a living. And I know that it is hard as you do this work, and we commend you for what you do as you've told these stories.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Vince. And as we say to you, as to all of our reporters and all the people that are out there, be careful. And we certainly will talk to you in a short while. If you are just joining us at 8 minutes after the hour of 5, we have been on the air now talking about what we call the attack on America in Lower Manhattan, a deadly terrorist attack in New York City and Washington today. The targets, the World Trade Center, as you can see right there, no longer the World Trade Center as we have known it. Both of those towers have been wiped out. They have been leveled to the ground. And the drama all unfolded earlier this morning. 2 airplanes smacked right into the World Trade Center. And after that, it's all history. It continued. The 2 buildings then exploded. They were leveled. Right now, an enormous loss of life and personal tragedy. Some of the figures that we have, 600 people right now in the New York hospitals. 150 are in critical condition. Earlier, Mayor Giuliani held a news conference. He said that he had placed the death toll at 5 in New York. Perhaps over 1,000 or more are injured, and those numbers, according to the mayor, no doubt will rise, and they will change as we go on. A lot of people still unaccounted for. You just heard Vince Dementri's report. Fire officials are trying to go inside to find those people who are trapped and some of the victims, but they can't do that until the fire is brought under control. Officials do believe that there were approximately 10,000 people who occupied those Twin Towers today. That's bad enough. It could have been 50,000 perhaps, but we're told that it was about 10,000 people this morning when the attack occurred, including hundreds and hundreds of people on the ground, including police and firefighters. Very brave to be doing their job.
We should also go over again what airlines these were. The first plane that hit the World Trade Center building number 1 was American Airlines Flight 11 from Boston to Los Angeles, 81 passengers, 9 flight attendants, 2 pilots. 18 minutes later, American Airlines Flight 77, Washington to Los Angeles. That was Dulles to Los Angeles, 58 passengers, 4 flight attendants, 2 pilots, crashing in number 2 World Trade. United Airlines Flight 93, Newark to San Francisco, crashing near Pittsburgh, Somerset County, PA. That's crashing at a strip mine area. A man on a cell phone, it was reported from a dispatcher on the ground, said he got a call from a man on a cell phone on board that plane saying, "We are being hijacked. We're being hijacked." Again, it crashed southeast of Pittsburgh. And then United Airlines Flight 175, Boston to Los Angeles, 56 passengers, 7 flight attendants, 2 pilots, crashed at the Pentagon. Heavy damage, injuries, 20,000 people estimated evacuated from the Pentagon alone. Capitol also evacuated. Lawmakers, aides, tourists all sent into the surrounding streets of our nation's capital.
And Dana, those 4 plane accidents that you were talking about, those plane crashes, the figure that we have is approximately 266 people who have been killed in those 4 separate airline crashes. That's approximately 266 passengers and crew members aboard those 4 planes. President Bush, of course, reacted quickly to what was going on, vowing to find those responsible and assured the American people that security measures were in place In terms of our safety, the president also said that other top government leaders and officials are said to be in a safe place. He was deeply concerned, as we heard from the president today, and he talked about that this nation today, in his words, is being tested, and he said that we will pass this test. We've been hearing yes.
I was just going to say, here in New York, several hospitals have been quite busy, including St. Vincent's, where our reporter Whitney Casey is standing by to give us the latest on injuries and just how the crews are handling everything, the hospitals, the doctors rather, and the nurses there. Whitney, what can you tell us?
Well, right now the numbers are climbing as expected. We have about 300, over 300 right now, but joining us is Mark Ackerman. He is the executive director of the hospital. Now, you say a lot of the injuries that you've seen now have been abrasions to the cornea from a lot of the emergency workers because of all that dust in the area.
The most recent injuries that we've gotten in have been firefighters and police officers who've been literally digging through the debris, and with all the concrete dust in the air, they're getting a lot of abrasions and literally bloody fingers from digging by hand.
And you said, and this is sort of morbid, that the digging has begun again.
Right. The EMS had informed us that all the rescuers had to back off for about almost an hour, and unfortunately they've informed us that they have begun digging again, and they believe we'll be seeing a number of live victims coming in here through the night. So we are prepared with all of our physicians and nurses to be here through the night. We're on our constant state of preparedness, and just ask all of our employees to please come in for their regular shifts. If they have any trouble with transportation, to please call us and we'll arrange through the police department to get them here.
Now, for somewhat of a frenetic thing that's happening down, this right here has been very calm.
We unfortunately have had a lot of practice with very major disasters in this city, and St. Vincent's has, from the time literally of the Titanic, brought in hundreds of patients at a time from great disasters, and we're well practiced at it, unfortunately.
But the worst is not over yet. You said in the World Trade Center bombing in '93, 30 to 36 hours later, there were still more people coming.
Yeah, what will happen is people will not realize that they may have fallen and hurt their shoulder or gotten injured or had some type of mental trauma, and we really encourage people to reach out to one of the hotlines. We have 3 of them to talk about this disaster today. It will really affect all of us in this city.
Thank you so much, Mark. Take care. Now, again, let me give you some of those numbers. The Family Center number here, if you may be concerned that you have family members here at St. Vincent's, is 212-604-8053. Now, you can also come down here to St. Vincent's. There's a Family Center at 55 West 12th Street and 65 West 11th Street. Now, also, Mark did tell us the number is 310 patients that are now here, 42 rescue workers, mostly because this is the closest trauma center to the World Trade Center. 45 now in critical condition, and we have 3 deaths, and they're saying that 1 death was a firefighter. Reporting live from St. Vincent's, Whitney Casey, and CBS2.